It's Thursday, April 2nd, 2026. Do you value your privacy, and do you think you have more or less of it than you did 25 years ago? I picked 25 since 25 years ago was 2001 when the Patriot Act was signed into law by then US President George W. Bush in response to the 2001 attacks on the World Trade Center and the news amplified media frenzy about the mail-in anthrax attacks that took place in the US. The Patriot Act basically turbocharged the federal government's ability to define and persecute crime under the label of terrorism, which has been leveraged to terrify the American people ever since. Practically, the act gave a legal precedent to the government to do a sort of previously unheard of digital surveillance on not just terrorists, but all Americans. It also set the law that allowed the federal government to detain illegal immigrants for any period of time without trial, which we're aware has stark consequences today. We, most Americans, were made aware to the extent to which this precedent was being used when Edward Snowden, previously an NSA analyst, leaked the scope of this digital surveillance to the press. There's a whole Wikipedia article dedicated to Snowden disclosures that is fascinating if you haven't dove into it before, and knowing just how these programs were structured, at least in the early 20-teens, is interesting to you. The long and short of it is that the US government has been performing mass surveillance via phone metadata, basically who you are, where you are, who you're talking or texting to, and for how long, since the Patriot Act. And not just on bad actors or suspected terrorists, but on all Americans. In the time since, many of the provisions from the Act expired in 2020 after being renewed for decades throughout the Obama administrations. However, the spirit of the bill is very much still alive and well, as whereas the bill was originally written, allegedly, to require at least the standard in law enforcement justification at the time, that is to say, a warrant, that is no longer the world that we live in. Kash Patel, the director of the FBI, verified earlier this week under testimony that the FBI purchases personal data about Americans in bulk regularly from commercial data brokers. It's completely above board. Not only do they get to sidestep the law that was written to protect this sort of overreach, they are spending your tax dollars to do it. It's something I'm not at all comfortable with. In fact, this is just the latest news about the erosion, if not the abolition, of our privacy, and it's had me pretty mad for a while. My DFL resolution that I introduced back when we were caucusing demanded stronger personal data privacy protections. The way that resolutions work there is, I think we had 110 final resolutions that made it onto a ballot at the local convention. And then delegates at that convention, which we selected back during the caucus, had to vote on every single one of those resolutions. In order for a resolution to pass on to the state, which is basically the next rung up the government hierarchy, a given resolution, I think, had to hit a 60% yes threshold, and it also had to be one of the top resolutions because we only had so many to pass on to the state. I think we had 48 just based on the number of delegates that we send to the state convention. I'm happy to report that my stronger personal data privacy resolution passed the local convention. It was in the top, number 13 in terms of votes, and 2 of those top 13, including mine, were focused on personal privacy. Mine was more general and aimed towards passing GDPR style, or general data privacy regulation. It's basically data privacy regulation that is active in the EU. Privacy laws, I wanted to pass them here in the US. The other resolution that passed on to the states more directly targeted at the government use of our data for surveillance. So while I think generally our situation is that we are still frogs sitting in a boiling pot, at least there are more than one of us who are still trying to blow to cool it off.